Welcome back to Fun Facts Online. Today we are leaving the common history books behind and traveling to the rugged foothills of the Zagros Mountains, specifically to the Shahrizor Plain in Iraqi Kurdistan. If you read the standard narratives of late antiquity, the story of the Near East is dominated by a massive binary conflict. You have the Roman Empire in the west, which was Christian, and the Sasanian Empire in the east, which was Zoroastrian. The story usually goes that these two superpowers were locked in eternal war, and that within the Sasanian Empire the state religion was rigidly enforced, often leading to the persecution of religious minorities like Christians. It is a narrative of conflict, of clash, and of rigid borders. But archaeology has a way of complicating these clean historical narratives, and a recent discovery at a site called Gird-î Kazhaw is forcing us to rewrite that story. We are going to look at the Gird-î Kazhaw Pax, a fascinating example of symbiosis, where a Sasanian military fortress and a Christian monastery didn't just coexist, they relied on each other. To understand why this discovery is so significant, we first need to understand the landscape. The Shahrizor Plain is a massive intermontane valley. Historically, this has always been a corridor. It connects the Mesopotamian lowlands to the Iranian plateau. It is a transit zone for armies, for trade caravans, and for ideas. During the Sasanian period, which ran from 224 to 651 CE, this wasn't a quiet backwater. It was a strategic frontier zone, guarding the passes into the Zagros Mountains. It acted as a buffer against mountain tribes, and a staging ground for campaigns to the north and west. The site we are focusing on, Gird-î Kazhaw, is located near the modern village of Bestansur. It is not a single mound, which is what we often find in Near Eastern archaeology. Instead, it is a complex of two distinct mounds separated by a shallow depression. Archaeologists call them Mound A and Mound B. Mound A is the northern one. It is lower, rising only 2 or 3 meters above the plain, but it is broad and oval-shaped. Mound B, to the south, is steep and imposing, rising nearly 10 meters high, offering a commanding view of the entire valley. A joint German-Kurdish team from Goethe University Frankfurt and the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg, led by Dirk Wicke and Alexander Tam, began excavating here around 2015. What they found was a strange historical timeline. The site had been occupied in the Bronze Age, but then it was abandoned. For nearly 2,000 years, it lay silent. Then, suddenly, in the late 5th century CE, likely under the reign of the Sasanian king Kavad I, the site was purposefully resettled. This wasn't an organic village growing over time. This was a planned imperial intervention. Let's look at Mound B first, the High Mound. This was the anchor of the Sasanian presence. Excavations here revealed a massive fortification system. We are talking about a perimeter wall preserved to a height of nearly 4 meters in some places. It was built using mud brick on stone foundations, which is the classic signature of Sasanian military architecture. Inside these walls, the team found the debris of a garrison's life: storage jars for grain, weaponry, and administrative seals. This was a state-sponsored installation, a hinterland fortress designed to secure road networks and the nearby freshwater spring. The soldiers stationed here represented the King of Kings, the Shahanshah. In the Sasanian worldview, the king was the guardian of order, or Asha, against chaos, or Druj. While they didn't find a fire temple inside the excavated section, the military administration was deeply linked to Zoroastrianism. These soldiers would have observed the rituals of the good religion, and their presence was a physical assertion of state dominance. The dating here is crucial. King Kavad I ruled from 488 to 531 CE. His reign was chaotic. He was dealing with the Mazdakite social movement internally, wars with the Hephthalites in the east and the Romans in the west. Building this fortress was part of a desperate need to secure the frontiers. Now, let's look across that shallow depression to Mound A, less than a stone's throw away. If Mound B was the sword of the state, Mound A turned out to be something completely different. In the center of this low mound, archaeologists hit stone pillars. These were square pillars made of rubble stone and coated in white gypsum plaster. This is a high-status technique, but the layout was a three-aisled hall. It was a basilica. To the east, it terminated in a sanctuary. The layout and finds confirmed that this was a Christian church. But it gets more interesting. Geophysical surveys, specifically magnetometry, showed that this church wasn't alone. It was surrounded by a honeycomb of walls and courtyards, suggesting cells, refectories, and workshops. This was a monastic complex, or a large estate centered on the church. The pottery confirms it was built and used at the exact same time as the fortress. This implies that while Sasanian soldiers were sharpening their swords on the high mound, Christian monks were chanting liturgy on the low mound, right next door. The most shocking aspect of this is the visibility. This church wasn't hidden in a cave. It was a large, whitewashed structure. A sentry standing on the ramparts of the Sasanian fortress could look down and watch the monks processing. He could hear them. There were no defensive walls separating the monks from the soldiers. The architecture implies a total lack of fear. This is what we call the Gird-î Kazhaw Pax. So how do we explain this? Why would a Zoroastrian military fortress tolerate a Christian complex right under its nose during a time of religious tension? The answer is likely economic necessity. A fortress is a hungry beast. It needs grain, meat, oil, pottery, and textiles. Soldiers cannot farm and fight at the same time. Monasteries in late antiquity were major economic engines. They were disciplined, they organized agriculture, they managed herds, and they ran workshops. It is highly probable that the Sasanian administration actually encouraged this settlement. It was a quid pro quo. The monks provided the surplus food and logistical support the fortress needed. In exchange, the fortress provided security against bandits and raiders. It is also important to understand the specific type of Christianity here. This was likely the Church of the East, often called Nestorian Christianity. By the 5th century, this church had separated itself from the Roman Church. To the Sasanian kings, these Christians were politically safe. They were considered heretics by the Roman emperor, which made them loyal subjects to the Persian king. They were viewed as our Christians, distinct from Roman Christians. So to the commander of the fortress, these monks weren't fifth columnists, they were productive subjects. This discovery forces us to revise the narrative of persecution. While there were periods of violence, specifically under kings like Shapur II, the archaeological record here suggests that for much of the Sasanian era, tolerance and pragmatism were the norm. The empire functioned as a multi-religious confederation where loyalty to the state mattered more than the god you worshipped. It also highlights the difference between the center and the periphery. In the capital cities, the Zoroastrian priests might rail against other faiths, but out here in the Zagros frontier, people had to live together. The Pax was a local achievement, a modus vivendi. It even suggests that the Sasanian state used Christian institutions as tools of colonization. To resettle the Shahrizer after a 2,000-year abandonment, they needed a reliable population. Who better than a monastic community known for agricultural prowess? This implies a level of state-church cooperation that is rarely acknowledged. The story of Gird-î Kazhaw extends even further. Excavations on Mount B showed that long after the fortress crumbled, the site became an Islamic cemetery. The graves were oriented toward Mecca, but they used the high ground that had once been the seat of military power. This layering of history, from Bronze Age to Sasanian fortress and church to Islamic cemetery, encapsulates the resilience of the region. The Gird-î Kazhaw Pax is a testament to the capacity of human communities to build bridges over dogmatic divides. On these two mounds, a Sasanian commander and a Christian abbot found a way to be neighbors rather than enemies. The stones of the fortress and the pillars of the church stand as witnesses to this symbiosis, reminding us that the history of the Middle East is not just about conflict. It is also about the quiet, unrecorded compromises that allow life to flourish.